Well, it's a massive weekend, isn't it? The transfer window is now slammed shut until at least January. There will be no more. He's coming, he isn't coming, he's leaving, he isn't leaving. I suppose, though, there will be still some rumours as we build up towards January. But what we've got now is what we go with until January, until that window finally reopens on January the 1st. But we think we got what we wanted, didn't we? We got the transfer retool, the rebuild, the remold, whatever you want to call it, with 9 players arriving and several departing. Although I think there are still perhaps some players on this squad who many of us think that maybe should not still be at the club, that should have departed the club. I mean, top amongst them, I suppose, John McLaughlin, Ben Davis, Scott Wright. I think that many fans would hope that they would be moved on in this window. There's even some, I think, fans like, John Lundstrom, maybe he could be moved on. Borna Barisic, there are certainly concerns over the fact that both of them are entering the final year of their deal. And as yet, neither of them have signed a new deal and neither of them have been moved on. And we don't want a situation like last summer where 5 players just walked for nothing. So it's obviously still some issues to be addressed. It was a window where we saw players moved out, probably more than we thought. We saw 9 new arrivals to add to obviously Cantwell and Raskin to make it 11 new arrivals since January. Some positions perhaps not addressed that we wanted addressed. I think if we look back now, before we look at the window in particular and look at the players that have come and gone, we can't deal with initially those feelings that we have towards players that perhaps should have come into the club. I think there was very much a strong feeling that we needed a left-sided centre-back and maybe even a left back as well. Defense is not good, is it? It's a defense that is the same defense to take out John Suter as when we won 55. There's been real redevelopment of that defense. And opposition teams, especially those opposition teams with some talent and ability, I do regularly target our fullbacks who, whilst good going forward, are not so good at defending. Now, I think the vast majority of Scottish teams can't do that because they're just simply not good enough. But teams, like obviously that lot from across the city and teams we'll face it in Europe certainly will be good enough. There is certainly a big concern over that defence. Thank God we have got Jack Butland, obviously, who has been fantastic since he's come into the club. But the defence remains an issue. And in the words of Michael Beale himself, we said we needed to replace Ryan Kent, and then you turned again on that, like Michael Beale does seem to like to, saying that Rabbi Matondo is the step up there. Certainly, we're placing a lot of pressure on young Rabbi to step up and become the winger that we needed. We certainly haven't got a lot of depth in the wide positions. Seamer is perhaps one there. Matondo, Scott Wright, I suppose, but perhaps he's Scott Wright of the right ability. Has he showed anything so far during his Rangers career that would suggest that he is good enough? I don't know. You mentioned Tom Lawrence yesterday. I don't really see Tom Lawrence as an out-and-out wide player. So, look, 2 positions that perhaps do need to be addressed. Really do hope that they don't come back to haunt us during this first half of the season, especially with the fact that the Europa League fixtures were released today, as I mentioned on the video earlier. And, we're going to be playing pretty much 3 times a week on and off up until Christmas, with some tough ties upcoming in that Europa League, particularly the Betis and the Prague games. So this window has, like I said, been an interesting one, and it has been that remold, that retool that we wanted. Now let's look at the players that have departed the club over this summer. So obviously the big names there: Alan McGregor, who has retired; Morelos, who is still looking for a club, although allegedly is going to Fenerbahce to join up with Ryan Kent; Scotty Arfield, who is ripping it up in Charlotte for Charlotte FC in America; Philip Hallander, who has now joined, I think it's Brøndby, or has joined a team in Denmark, and we wish him all the very best. We've never really replaced big Philip Hallander. I think Hallander was a player that we did really need to replace. Mateusz Zakowski, from player never really, has never done anything at Rangers. Malik Tillman, who is end of loan. And a lot of the young players have moved on. Kane Ritchie Hosler's gone to Dunfermline. Sam Kane to Queen's Park. Kai Kennedy, Tony Weston, Charlie Lindsay, Kevin Chibutario, Alex Kapake, Murray Miller, Lewis McKinnon, Kelsey Ewan, Harley Ewan, all released by the club. Antonio Cholak, who many people thought we should have kept. I think there's a lot of discussion. Is Cholak a better bet than Dessers? By this point, Cholak had scored more goals. Is it because he was into a more settled team, or is it because he was just a better forward? A question that does remain for Michael Beale. Lewis Mayo's gone to Kilmarnock. Fashion Sakala to Alpha Hire. Some people see that as a mistake. Fashion Sakala, a man who divided the Rangers fan base, a man who some rated very highly and some not so highly. But certainly his numbers were very good. And And there's a lot of concerns that the players we've brought in so far have not replaced the numbers put up by Cholak, 18 goals last season, even though he missed 3 to 4 months of the season, and Fashion Sakala's goals and assists record last season. Yanis Hadji allowed to leave on loan. His future still very much up in the air. A lot of people don't think he will return to the club. Some people think he may return. The hope is that he has a good season in Alaves and certainly comes back either a better player or even gets us a lot more money next summer. Glenn Kamara sold for an incredible profit to Leeds, a 50k player, sold for around about 5.5 million. And then news yesterday that Josh McPake was released by mutual consent from his contract. So a lot of young players overall been released. Part of that restructure, that remold of this team as we seek to move forward. Now, the arrivals, well, it was a summer of sagas, wasn't it? It was a summer where lots of transfer deals seemed to drag on, particularly the Cifuentes deal, for example, and the Dessers deals. So Abdallah Sima, who is a lone player who I think really has flattered to deceive so far, a player who seems to lack confidence, who seems to, I don't know, just be lacking that worldie against PSV, the one standout moment. We certainly need to see more from Abdallah Sima in this second half, this first half of the season now, this window is closed. He does need to show some of that pace, that skill, that ability that he showed during his Slavia Prague days, particularly obviously in the game against Rangers. Jack Butland, I think, has been the standout signing of the summer. He's certainly been the best signing so far. He was fantastic against Eindhoven. He was a top player. He really did keep the score down, and I think he's been fantastic. He commands his area so well. He comes for crosses. I think he's one thing that's perhaps helped paper over the cracks in the defence a little bit is his talent and his ability. Jose Cifuentes, I think, was always going to be a difficult one. The guy's played pretty much for a year already. He's pretty much played a season. So is fatigue going to start to play a part? He looked a little bit behind the curve in the game against PSV, a little bit off the pace, and the game seemed to pass him by. But I suppose you've got a situation where he's got to adapt to adapt to the new game. It is quicker out here. It is more physical in Scotland than it certainly is in the MLS. So that is definitely one we need to keep an eye on. But I've certainly got big, big hopes for Jose Cifuentes. I don't think he'll become a bad player overnight. You've got then next three players that came in. Let's have a look at those three. Kieran Dowell, who is currently out injured, but certainly has impressed. He impressed during pre-season and has done pretty well since he's come into the team. He hasn't had a starting role, largely been used as a sub. I'd like to see Kieran get a few more minutes. Really like what he has contributed to the team and that fantastic goal against Livingston in particular. Dujon Sterling struggled at times now, I think, since he's come in. Did okay against Morton, struggled in the PSV game, but I suppose anyone would have struggled coming into that bonfire, that dumpster fire that he came onto when Bournemouth bottled it in the 77th minute. I think he needs a bit of time to adapt again to being a starter. He hasn't had a lot of time as a starter in particular. He's done a lot of spells on loan. He hasn't really been anywhere that he's called his own. Hopefully now he can build a career at Rangers. Leon Balogun, returning to the club, has done well since he's come back in, and many people think that he should be given a starting role this weekend ahead of Connor Goldson after Connor's disastrous performance in midweek. But certainly welcome Leon back to the club. Then we've got our misfiring three, our front men. Sam Lammers, again, flattered to deceive at many times. Looks technically very skillful, and it is to be hoped that he can kick on a little bit. But certainly his past record is a worry over recent seasons, and he hasn't really done great so far this window. Dinio, the big money signing, you've got to ask, what has he done wrong? Because Michael Beale seems to not fancy him. Rumours coming out that he hasn't settled yet, that he's struggling to settle at this moment in time to Glasgow. Maybe that's why he isn't getting the game time. I don't know. That's what the reports are saying. But it certainly is to be hoped that Dinio can come and show that he is the player that we certainly hoped he would be when we committed that much money to him. Finally, Cyril Dessers, who worked hard, good in the air, but really does struggle in front of goal. Many people hope that he will come good, and I certainly hope that he'll make me eat my words and he will come good in the second half of the season or in the rest of this season. But my personal feeling is that he won't score 10 goals this season. He has had 4 fantastic chances in the last 2 games and fluffed them all. He's in the last few seasons, he's never scored a great deal of goals. Yes, previously he did okay in Holland, and with Feyenoord in the Europa League, but since those days, he really has struggled to find the back of the net. I do have concerns over him going forward. He does seem to not be an out-and-out natural goal scorer, which considering Michael Beale often plays him as that out-and-out goal scorer, it is a worry. Kemar Roof, I think, does remain our best forward at the club. Well, let me know what you think of the window, guys. That's what's happened this window. Yes, we do need, I think, a centre-back. We do need a left-back, and we do need a winger still. I think we do very much miss those 3 players. But I think one thing we do have to say is well done to James Bisgrove and John Bennett, who have fully backed the manager over this window and given him what he wants. He certainly has no more excuses, especially as he said yesterday that is happy with the squad he has got. So like I said, let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. Please hit that sub, ring that notification bell. And as always, remember 2 things to do for me. Number 1, smash the like. And number 2, remember we are